Now, you might already be over the whole AI ChatGPT thing, but I can assure you that 2023 will see one of the biggest technology wars there's ever been. Yes, I'm going to talk about ChatGPT, but don't worry, this one is going to be different. I'm going to tell you the story of ChatGPT, what the business opportunity is, and why Google is on code red. Before we get into anything about ChatGPT specifically, let's take a quick look at Google's business model so you can see why they need to be worried right now. Now, we all know that Google has an enormous suite of products, from email to Google Drive, cloud services to Google X, and a bajillion other things. And in the fourth quarter of 2022, Google's revenue from AdWords alone was approximately $45.5 billion, representing over 85% of the company's total revenue for the quarter. Now, to understand Google's AdWords business, we're going to once again use the business model canvas by Strategizer to break down how they operate and how they actually create that kind of revenue. Now, AdWords is a multi-sided platform. Let's start off with what this looks like with regards to the value proposition. Now, the value proposition is very simple. It's all about providing instant search results. And as we'll see in a few minutes, they've got to be relevant and accurate results in order to keep their competitive advantage. Now, over to the customer segments, this is where the two-sided model comes in. We'll focus on just one side for the time being, which is their users, basically everyday internet users. And to be honest, that's most of the connected world, other than a couple of countries that have currently banned Google. Now, the customer relationship is all about providing trust to bring the most relevant answers. And it's a transactional relationship that essentially provides people with a service in exchange for the payment, or really it's their data that they are paying with. Now, the revenue stream for Google for this side of the business model, actually it's free, of course. It's free to the end users. We're not paying for anything, although it kind of is argued that really we're paying with our own data, but we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes. Now, in order to be able to do this, their key resources and pretty much their whole business side is built around maintaining and building the best platform with the best algorithms that they possibly can. Now, in order to maintain this best algorithm and platform, they need a vast network of servers, data centers, and a very large team of expert engineers and researchers that can continue to build on the platform. And that's how the majority of the world knows Google. But the second side of their business model is centered around their ads proposition. Highly targeted ads that drive web traffic to your website or the app that you're looking to sell. So their second target group is advertisers. Now, the channels, they've got a variety of channels that they can reach their customers, including search engines, of course, google.com. This is where the money really comes from. Essentially, we as users get a service for free because I guess we are the product, or at least our data is the product. And Google Ads sells ad space in the top right-hand corner or in the top area of the search results based on an auction. Essentially, the highest bidder gets their ads shown highest on the page. So based on this model, Google has not just become a leader in search, but one of the biggest companies in the world. So much so that until this year, it seemed inconceivable that it might actually start being disrupted itself. Now, ChatGPT, the AI chatbot, has taken the world by storm, achieving record-breaking user growth with 100 million active users in just 2 months. Let's compare that to other people. It's wild how quickly they've done that. It's been developed by OpenAI, which is a research lab founded by wildly successful entrepreneurs, including Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel, and Sam Altman, who is now the CEO. And it basically processes and analyzes enormous amounts of text data, allowing it to generate responses to pretty much any question that are both relevant and coherent. Now, I know that there's some widely publicized issues with it hallucinating answers. I'm not going to go too deeply on that right now, but it is something I think we're going to have to come back to in the future. Now, you can ask it to write pretty much anything you like. Recently, David Guetta asked it to write a verse in the style of Eminem about Future Rave. He then went to uberduck.ai to create Eminem's voice and actually got it to perform in exactly the same voice as Eminem. Now, he dropped it at a DJ gig and published a video of it to the world on social media, and it absolutely blew up.
This is the future rave sound. I'm getting lost in an underground. This is the future rave sound. I'm getting lost in an underground.
Now again, there's loads of serious questions about copyright and creativity, but that's going to have to wait for another time. But some of the more useful everyday prompts include things like writing articles, essays, marketing copy, summarizing long bodies of unstructured text like interview transcripts or long form articles, brainstorming ideas, or even writing or debugging code. Now, whilst the underlying technology that powers ChatGPT, GPT 3.5, has been around for a while, the thing that made it blow up was giving the back-end technology a front-end user interface. The magic really happens when you start interacting with it in conversation, especially if you ask it to take on a persona and deliver results back in the style that you're looking for. And one experiment by Joe Sherville highlighted this all too well. He set out to discover and understand how a chatbot would behave if it only understood the world through specific newspapers. He asked it to create 4 different personas for 4 British newspaper readers and then asked 5 questions each. It's actually pretty horrifying what it came back with, but I absolutely recommend going and checking it out, and the link is down below. So this is all interesting, but what about the business model here? And how does this mean Google is in trouble? Okay, now let's have a look at OpenAI's business model for ChatGPT. And starting with, again, the value proposition. Now, of course, ChatGPT's value proposition is a little bit different. It's essentially to get an instant answer to any question in any format. Now, the customer segments at this stage, really they're very early adopters generally of tech products. Now, you might be already sick to death of hearing about ChatGPT, but it is just getting started. And those 100 million people is actually a small minority of a much bigger future addressable market that they might be able to reach for. Now, the customer relationship this time is a little bit different. Really, it's about kind of an automation partner. It's kind of like a person that you can delegate certain tasks to. And it is already being used in everyday work by people. And that's one of the proof points. Although sometimes it doesn't give the perfect answer, it doesn't give correct answers sometimes. The fact that it's being used, and it's being used to automate some of those easier maybe or mundane tasks, actually even creative tasks as well, then it is an essential part of people's workflow. Therefore, I think that the customer relationship with ChatGPT is that it's an automation partner. Now, the channels are really interesting, and I think this is one of the things that has amazed a lot of people around ChatGPT. And what they've done is created an enormous amount of earned media via really viral product growth. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure you've seen so many articles, blogs, videos, examples of people using ChatGPT, screenshots popping up on LinkedIn and other social platforms. It's even been in the press and the mass media now, being used constantly. So all of that media, all of that marketing hasn't been generated by OpenAI. Instead, it's been generated by the world. This essentially is like free promotion for using ChatGPT. And when you've got people that are writing specific recipes and prompts for using it, that's something that leads to incredible virality. And that's why we've seen this enormous growth in such a short amount of time. Now, the revenue streams, again, it's a free product, although we will see in a few minutes that there are revenue streams that are starting to be created around ChatGPT as well. Now, the big key activities, the big body of work that they've had to do, really it's all about invention and continuously building that AI engine. That's the main focus that they've had over the last couple of years. The key resources, of course, enormous tech infrastructure. The servers, the data centers that they've got must be absolutely incredible. Of course, they'll be using cloud-based services, but still an enormous amount of resource needed. And of course, AI engineers, data scientists, coders, all of those, that enormous team of technical people that is needed in order to turn this idea into a reality. Estimation is that it costs something like £100,000 a day, £3 million a month in order to keep those servers running. This is an enormous amount of money that's needed, huge capital investment to get started and to get to the point that they're at right now. Now, their revenue model starts with the internet users, but the next part down is pro users using it for everyday business. These pro users want an undisturbed, quicker use of ChatGPT in order to make sure they have uninterrupted use and access to ChatGPT every single day. Now, in order to do that, there's this pro subscription, which is $20 per month. Now, I'm going to break down an estimate of what this subscription model might actually bring in terms of revenue. Now, to try and figure out how many of this number actually upgrade to the paid version, let's have a quick look at some examples of freemium to premium conversion rates for other organizations. Now, I'm getting all of these numbers from an amazing article by Pierre Hurabel on LinkedIn. The link to this article will be in the description as well. Pierre, thank you so much for this amazing work. So based on the numbers that we had from January, ChatGPT had 100 million free active users. So in order to understand how many of these people move from free into a paid subscription, we'll have a quick look at some benchmarking of freemium to premium conversion rates. Now, Spotify's out there, leader of the pack really, with 27% of people moving from freemium to premium and paying for the subscription service. Evernote about 4.1% and Dropbox about 4%. Google Drive coming in at about 0.5%. But typically the freemium conversion rate is about 1 to 5%. Let's take the bottom end of that in order to make a compelling argument for what we think the revenue could look like. So the monthly recurring revenue is the price that each user pays, of course, multiplied by the number of people paying. So what we'll do is we'll multiply 100 million times 1% in order, of course, to get to 1 million paid users. Therefore, the monthly recurring revenue is 1 million people times by the $20 per person, which gives us monthly recurring revenues of $20 million. That means the potential annual recurring revenue, the AAR, is 20 million times 12 months, which is $240 million each year. Of course, that's not quite right because of churn, but it also isn't quite right because of additional users coming on board as well. But let's just look at churn in order to see the worst case scenario to start with. Now, some users, of course, they're going to stop using the pro version. They're going to refer back to the free version, maybe because it's not quite hitting their expectations, or for what other reason, they just don't see it as important. The annual churn rate for kind of average SaaS companies is thought to be between 3 and 8%. If we take that highest percentage of 8%, it'll be 240 million minus 8% this time, which gets to 220,800,000. So in other words, based on their current amount of free users, using some simple conversion techniques, there is potential to reach at least £220 million each year. And that's after just 2 months of this thing being live, which is again is an enormous amount of growth. That being said, it has been in development for a number of years still. So let's see how ChatGPT actually compares to Google. Now, Google's revenue from AdWords alone is something like $1.2 billion per year. So with ChatGPT only generating $200 million, it might seem like Google are perfectly safe. But there are a couple of extra thoughts. Firstly, that ChatGPT is at a very early stage. That figure is based on 100 million users, which is likely to massively increase as adoption crosses the chasm from early adopter to late and early majority. That said, there's an issue that puts Google still ahead. That not all of the answers are correct and certainly not up to date. That's where Microsoft comes in. Microsoft has been a key partner of OpenAI for many years, but in January 2023, they invested a further $10 billion, valuing OpenAI at $29 billion. This partnership could bring GTP models into every product, thinking about Word, Excel, Bing, even its cloud development infrastructure, Azure. Now, on February the 7th, 2023, Microsoft held a special event at Redmond to announce the new Bing, which incorporates ChatGPT-like model into search. But unlike the ChatGPT that we're now familiar with which is restricted to data up to 2021, the new feature for Microsoft will likely be GTP4, which is dramatically more aware of the current state of the web. Now, I never thought I'd ever join a waitlist for a Microsoft product again, but I have to say I am super excited about this. And whilst all this has been happening, Google's actually been developing its own AI, Lambda, which arguably is even better than GTP. And now they're releasing Bard, an experimental conversational AI service powered by Lambda. Now, you might ask why they haven't improved search if they already had the capability to do so. Now, that comes down to the concept Clayton Christensen wrote about called the innovator's dilemma. Essentially, do Google cannibalize their current business model ads in order to protect themselves against the threat of disruption of AI startups? And the pace of development of AI is staggering. I think we're a few years ahead of what's been predicted. For example, it's quite possible that the Turing test has already been completed. What's even more staggering is the pace of change for the future. There are currently huge limitations for ChatGPT right now, but with AI capability doubling every 6 months, far exceeding Moore's law, those limitations will very quickly be a thing of the past. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, said this about Google: "If I was sitting on a lethargic search monopoly and had to think about a world where there was going to be a real challenge to the way that monetization of this works and new ad units, maybe even temporary downward pressure, I would not feel great about that." So the important question is, will the OpenAI Microsoft partnership switch users quickly enough to their platforms before Google comes out of its lethargy and creates value propositions and revenue models with its own AI technology that are able to protect it from disruption? So who's going to win? Well, I've got no idea. Why don't you let me know in the comments below? That's it for now. Hopefully, I'll see you again next time.